El rápido desarrollo de las nuevas tecnologías digitales tiene un gran impacto en el sistema bancario y financiero, y ello ha generado la necesidad de que su regulación sea actualizada y constante. Pero los retos y posibilidades se expanden a una velocidad casi imposible día a día. La irrupción de nuevas tecnologías que generan productos financieros es un proceso ya irreversible. Conceptos como fintech, big tech, data driven, ciberseguridad, crypto assets son términos familiares en el mundo del derecho. Sin embargo, a ellos deben sumarse también conceptos como el de sostenibilidad, innovación y, ¿por qué no?, cambio climático. Para conversar sobre estos temas y otros afines, nos acompaña esta tarde Richard Wee, socio fundador de la firma de Malasia Richard Wee Chambers, experto en fintech, derecho deportivo, derecho laboral y también eSport Law. Soy Miguel Porras, socio del estudio Ugaz Segarra y Abogados Asociados. Bienvenidos. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Richard Wee, founding partner of Richard Wee Chambers, a firm based in Malaysia. Richard is an expert in fintech, sport law, employment law, and e-sport law. And today, join us to discuss about the impact of new digital technology in day-to-day law. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Miguel. Firstly, I want to say thank you to you and your law firm. It's always nice to connect with old friends, and I'm very pleased to be able to connect to you again, especially when we are halfway around the world. But this is the beauty of technology, that despite all the distance, we may be far on planet Earth, but we are very close technologically.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Richard, these are challenging and exciting times thanks to the unstoppable advance of new digital technologies, which have had an impact in law and particularly in the finance law/finance industry. So the financial system provides the medium to transform savings from those with surplus capital to those in need of capital, and to transform risk to help achieve productive investments at minimal costs. A great number of financial instruments and services provided to firms and investors by a range of markets, organizations, and individuals. So its importance is self-evident. Following that reasoning, Richard, I'd like to start by asking you about the three pillars of the financial system: innovation, sustainability, and digitization. How important are they in today's financial world?
Well, I must say, Miguel, that's a very good question. Number one, ever since we went through the unfortunate and the infamous COVID-19 pandemic, while we lost many people around the world, but the world also moved forward very rapidly for financial technology. So, for example, here in this region, in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand, and of course, not to forget the other countries like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, the Philippines, and to some extent Myanmar, despite uh, the political issues in Myanmar, all these countries have moved forward on financial technology. And all the three pillars that you mentioned has become pivotal in developing the fintech in this region. I give an example. There is a very popular and domineering financial technology app called Grab in Malaysia. And it moved to Singapore recently. We were quite sad to lose that app to Singapore. And it went listed in New York during the pandemic, you know, and it was valued a few billion dollars when it was launched. And what does it do? It allows us to, like Uber, order a ride, order food like Uber Eats. In fact, they are partners. Grab and Uber are partners. They also allow us to do shopping online by buying grocery stores, etc., etc. But the most interesting factor there, Miguel, is that it has an e-wallet where people put money into the wallet
Yeah.
and then buy things or pay for things using that wallet. I have no data on the exact quantum in that wallet, but I'm quite sure that the millions of people in this region, because Malaysians, Singaporeans, Indonesians, and Thailand, we're all using it. I'm quite sure all the millions of e-wallet combined, there will be billions of dollars in that e-wallet, you know. And all this is definitely thanks to the financial technology. So it's happening here in this region, in Southeast Asia.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for those answers. So going into the area of digitization and innovation, in a world interconnected and where the process of digitization goes hand in hand with innovation, how do you think banking and finance law have been impacted? In particularly, obviously, in your experience, what are your thoughts on the roles that sandbox, regulation, cybersecurity, and training and digital transformation have in this brave new world?
Oh, that's a good point. Um, Obviously, Miguel, and I'm sure it's happening in Peru and in South America. I've read about it. Some reports are in Spanish, so I had to translate it. But I know that around the region, there's been embracement even for cryptocurrency, for
Yes,
as a
we
change.
will
Yeah,
talk about
we'll talk
cryptocurrency.
about that later. Yeah,
So we'll talk
but
about it.
yeah, we'll talk about it. So in this region, in Southeast Asia, and I say even in Japan and Korea, there is a remarkable and China. There's a remarkable change in the compliance and regulatory issues for financial technology. And the other one is actually insurance technology, insurtech, which is quite connected to fintech. And in Malaysia, for example, the sandbox managed by our national bank and there are many other sandbox, but one of the biggest sandbox managed by our national bank focuses on regulatory issues and compliance. And it's definitely changed. As your question was, did it change? Definitely. Our KYC, eKYC becomes far more prominent. Our RegTech, and there's one more, regulation technology. RegTech has been evolving and developing. It works hand in hand, corresponding with fintech. Lawyers have now, we are forced to adapt to the technological changes, to understand the technology, which is what people like you and me are doing, Miguel. We are both obviously constantly reading and understanding the changes. And as for me, I feel like I'm back in law school every day because there's always something new, we have to change
Yeah,
and
we never
rethink.
stop learning. That's a process that continues forever.
Yeah, yeah. So we have to always rethink, and then this process, like you say, is going on forever. But to answer the question, yes, in this region, there's been changes as for the issues that I mentioned: eKYC, sandbox, our Financial Services Act, our rules, our regulations, etc., etc. Lots of changes to ensure transparency, security, and to ensure, most importantly, that the people trust the system. So
Yeah, that's very important. So, sorry to interrupt you there. With the point of cybersecurity, because you talk about trust, and obviously, the public, people using all these new products need to feel safe when they use it there.
very important.
Exactly. So, how do you see the point of cybersecurity, the role that it plays, and also how do you see? Although I know you are not an expert in criminal law, but also the point of cybercrime.
Yeah. Actually, just a side note, Miguel. When I was a younger lawyer, I was I'm quite old now. But the first 10 years of my career, in fact, up to my first 15 years of my career, I was actually handling a number of criminal defense cases,
Oh,
particularly for drugs. Uh,
I see.
yeah,
So
Malaysia. We
you're
have
very
this.
modest. You don't put that on your
Uh,
expertise.
yeah. We just help most of it on legal aid cases. And in Malaysia, for drug offences, many of it carry death penalty.
Oh, I
And
see.
under the law, any person charged with a capital offence, a death penalty,
Oh,
must
wow.
have a lawyer. Must have a
Yeah.
lawyer. So I'm in that
Yes.
list. I'm in that list.
Yeah.
I volunteer to help people. So I've done it a number of cases, in fact. But for cybersecurity in Malaysia, for cybercrime, there are extensive laws in Malaysia on cybercrime. But some of the laws, of course, are outdated. It
Mm,
requires constant updating.
exactly.
And or it requires constant reinterpretation of the law.
Hmm.
So that is ongoing in Malaysia, particularly on fraud of scams on crypto, fintech, e-wallet scams. So that is
Wow.
ongoing. We have it here. But for cybersecurity in Malaysia, it is very tight. Our national bank, which is the bank which owned by the government, the national bank is very aggressive in maintaining, sustaining, and building cybersecurity for financial technology. So we have quite good, and I must say the same thing in Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and in Philippines. They are all very, very aggressively protecting the people from cyber fraud.
Okay. Well, interesting. That's good to know. Yes. As you just mentioned, because of the constant development of technology, um, there's a need to be updated with the changes, and the law
Yes.
obviously needs to change in accordance with these changes that technology is bringing. But thank you for your answers on that. So now I would like to move on to the transformation of the financial system, so the
Okay.
technological leverage and emergence of new businesses. So following these ideas being discussed, how do you see the current financial system and its transformation? Let's talk about technological leverage, and
Okay.
emergence of new businesses. I have a list that I propose to discuss here. So perhaps you can tell me your ideas on them. Perhaps the first point we can talk about is data driven. Data driven. Why is so important in the financial system transformation to have data driven?
Ah, uh, so interesting. I was just dealing with a client, dealing with
No?
cloud. Yeah, so this company they're doing cloud,
Yes, yes,
to
of course.
maintain our security and data, and
Uh-huh.
of course they were trying to protect the data. So I had a long discussion with the client about protection of data,
Yeah.
and I think the for fintech and insurtech, when I discuss with my clients, and of course when we discuss with the authorities, the importance of data is to ensure accuracy and veracity of the way fintech is run, and of course also data is important to protect the people's data, people's PDPA, our personal data. So I think it's the main purpose of any fintech or insurtech company having the data to protect is to ensure security, safety, trust, and at the same time accuracy, veracity, and to make sure that when they do something, they get it right, as compared to shooting in the dark and hope to get it right. So data is good. Very good.
Yeah. In the case of fintech and big tech, so what can you tell us about your experience with that? How do you see the business of the fintech and big tech? Do you think
I must confess that I haven't had much chance to deal with the big tech companies in Malaysia. A lot of my clients, startups, developing startups, fintechs.
Okay.
Some are of course licensed, and some has become very big. In fact, like now, I'm very fortunate to assist a pet insurance app, for example.
Okay. Oh,
It is an app trying to protect pets,
Yes.
and we are advising them on their work. It's what I noticed this, Miguel. Number one, the change of behavior. I think the behavioral patterns of the people have changed. While we used to trust cash, now we are all right with apps, transferring money using data or QR code. And number two, flowing from that change of behavior, we see companies more prepared to accept fintech as a mode of payment and a mode of receiving money. And I think the days of a check is slowly dying.
Yes.
Yeah, it's slowly dying. So in my experience dealing with fintech, I noticed that change first. 6 years ago, people were still very apprehensive. But the last 3 years, I think because we were all stuck at home and we couldn't go out, we had no choice but to buy and sell things using technology. And people really embrace fintech greatly in this region. Not just Malaysia, again, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, really, really aggressively adapting to fintech. The change of behavior.
Yeah. Quite interesting. So if I don't understand you wrong, so before the pandemic, people were a bit more reluctant to use fintech, whereas now there's a movement towards it. So people use it more, are more agreeable to use it.
Correct. Totally spot on. Is the same thing happening in Peru, in Lima?
Yes, exactly. My question comes because of that. As you know, I lived in the UK for several years. So I was using, or people were using in general, banking online and all these products. But since, let's say, 15 years, 20 years ago. But in Peru, I could see always the contracts. Every time I came back to Peru, I could see that people were very reluctant to make payments using the online system because they were they didn't trust it. So many people, most of the people prefer to go and queue, just to pay for the electricity, gas. But nowadays that's changing. But as you said, aggressively, very, very fast, very, very fast.
Very fast, yeah.
And even some Peruvian entrepreneurs have started new apps for payments that have become very popular. There's one called Yape, which is YAPE. So
YAPE. I'll go check it out.
Yes,
YAPE.
yes. YAPE, and another one called Plin, PLIN. So they were separate payment systems, but now their regulatory system has forced them to join, so they can make payments. They are interconnected now. So that's quite interesting, because we were talking about how the regulatory system works, and in Peruvian case, these very popular apps for payment now by law have to interact between them.
See. Yeah.
So
that's good. That's really good for the people. Very good for the people.
Absolutely. So that's quite interesting to see and compare. Perhaps at some point we can have a chat about how and compare, how the Malaysia is developing on that area with Peru, so how much people trust it, so So it would be it. Let's make a note of that for
Yeah, that's for
our
our next
conversation in the
podcast.
future.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So what about the what do you say about the user experience? So how the user interacts and experience the products. The financial products and the utility, the use of ease of use, and the efficiency. How I mean, can you tell us you view how it has developed, compared to, let's say, 5, 7 years ago?
Well, again, I think that's a really practical question, Miguel. I can tell you first that in this region, whether you live in a small village somewhere in Indonesia or in a big city somewhere in the Philippines, everybody is moving towards fintech. Everybody's slowly moving towards that. I must give credit. Actually, we have to also give credit to the fintech providers. Many of these fintech providers have made it very easy for people to switch from cash to technology. For example, payment by scanning a QR code and making handphones easily available, smartphones easily available all over the country. And also, there are more and more affordable smartphones. As you know, there are some smartphones which are very premium in price, but there are also plenty of smartphones which are entry level price, befitting of certain budget, and that made it very easy for people to use it. The other one, which we must not forget, is the importance of 4G and of course now 5G and the internet. Fintech needs the internet. Without the internet, it doesn't work at all. So it goes hand in hand at the same time with the development of 4G and 5G in this region. And it is not coincidence that in Malaysia, for example, the growth of fintech, other than COVID-19, the growth of fintech correspond with the growth of 4G. It goes hand in hand, right?
Okay.
Now, so in to answer the question, in this region, particularly as a Malaysian, I can see in Malaysia, the embracing fintech is huge. Is
Uh-huh.
huge. Yeah, I now see very young people, middle-aged people like me, 40, 50-year-old person who's we are from the analog generation, and then
Yeah.
a 70, 80-year-old man who's really, really old, not used to technology. They're all using e-wallets.
Okay.
They're using e-cash or online banking. You know, so people are really embracing it.
So
And I
age
believe,
is not a barrier.
yeah, age has not become a barrier. So I repeat, we have to give credit to the fintech operators.
Yes.
They made it easy for us to use. And of course, as lawyers, Miguel, for you and people like you and me, our job is to make sure that that process is legally compliant. That there's no breach of data, that we have elements of KYC, eKYC is complied, you know. And of course, in Malaysia, we comply with the local laws of
Yeah.
our banking. So that's all that combined, we have a good system.
Oh, excellent.
Mm.
Excellent. Quite interesting. So just to connect to what you just mentioned, because you mentioned internet, and obviously the point that I'm going to mention now is it's connected. The social media, how
Mm.
social media plays a role here, so in the finance and banking systems and its
Well,
development.
social media in this region, before fintech, was already very big. Malaysians, talking only about Malaysians for now,
Yeah.
about 15 years ago, was really big into Facebook.
Okay.
And before that was Friendster. That
Yeah.
became Facebook. Many people don't realize that Friendster, when it was going down, was bought over by a Malaysian company
Oh,
about 15 years ago. Yeah.
yeah.
Then eventually it was sold off again. Facebook was really big. Then Twitter came, Instagram came, Pinterest came. But the last 5 years, the number one social media in Malaysia is TikTok.
Not a
Not
surprise.
surprised, yeah. And let's not forget about YouTube. One of the
Yes. Oh, of course,
original,
of course,
yeah,
of course.
one of the original social medias. But TikTok is very popular, and more and more of these apps are now they are infusing local fintech system into their app for payment purposes, etc., etc. So on Facebook, for example, as you know, there's a market. It's called a place called Marketplace, and in Malaysia, you can buy and sell things on Marketplace Facebook, and pay in Malaysian ringgit. Our currency is called ringgit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I believe in Peru it's called peso.
Sol, yeah,
Sol.
which means
Sol.
sun. You know, the
Sun.
sun.
Okay.
Sol,
All right.
yeah.
Peso is in Spain or Mexico, right?
But no,
Yeah.
in
So,
Mexico, in Spain now is the euro. They used to
uh,
call it pesetas in Spain.
pesetas, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they've gone now.
So our ringgit is used on Facebook, but we all know Facebook is an American social media. So definitely, yes, social media in this region plays a strong part in getting people to use and embrace fintech.
Excellent. Okay.
Mm.
Well, so now let's talk about something that you mentioned already, but it's something that is becoming more and more visible, which is crypto assets.
Crypto, yeah.
And the regulatory challenges to that. What are your thoughts on that, Richard? Have they arrived to stay?
Mm. I remembered Miguel um, when I think the famous Christopher Columbus
Yeah.
crossed the sea,
Yeah.
and then he discovered what he thought was India, without
Yes.
realizing that he discovered your continent.
Yeah.
And he was very excited for many decades, for many centuries. The Europeans were traveling to America, North and South America, to move. And I think our blockchain and cryptocurrency is similar. I think we've just discovered a new territory,
The new
uh,
world.
new world, yeah. And of course, blockchain, unlike our current Web 2.0, is decentralized. That's number one. We have to first understand that blockchains are decentralized. And then, of course, cryptocurrency, and the other one is NFT. These are the products of blockchains. By having blockchains, you have a product called cryptocurrency, and this cryptocurrency, we give value to the cryptocurrency. And in Malaysia, there's even trading agencies like Luno, which helps to trade like a stock exchange, buy and sell uh, bitcoins and Dogecoins, etc., etc. That is regulated in Malaysia. But the truth is, Miguel, I think any country in this region, I don't want to speak for other regions, not fair, but in this region from Thailand all the way to Indonesia and up north to Philippines and Myanmar, I think we are not ready for the regulatory aspects is still developing, right?
Okay. Okay.
Recently, I had the opportunity to meet the Malaysian Minister for Science and Technology just a few months ago. So in my discussions with him, he raised his thoughts about the government of Malaysia exploring the options of regulating cryptos. And even for court cases here in this region, Miguel, for Malaysia alone, there are less than 10 cases tested in courts
Yeah.
on what is crypto and how it works. In
Yeah.
Singapore, there's been a few cases. So we in this region, we are constantly keeping an eye, reading up on those cases. And even in Thailand and Indonesia, they have cases, but of course, we have to translate with Thai language and Indonesian language, Bahasa Indonesia. It's slightly different from English. In fact, it's very different from English. But we do read. We do read. So that's ongoing. I think we may have to do a few more podcasts on this, Miguel. And maybe I would say it will take another 5 years
Yeah.
before the regulatory bodies and agency come closer and closer to crypto and blockchains.
Okay, so we can say that we are still navigated uncharted waters.
But of course, I always tell my clients, I'm not saying it's a wild wild west. I'm not saying this is a
Okay.
cowboy. I'm not saying
Okay.
that because while it's unregulated, what it means is that there is no specific law, no specific rule regulating it. But we have plenty. Malaysia is a common law country. We are former British Commonwealth country, or British colony country. So we are British Commonwealth country. So we rely on the British system.
Yes.
And we have plenty of common law cases. We still have contract law, we have company
Okay.
law, criminal law. This was still regulated. But like I said earlier on, Miguel, if you remember, I said it requires reinterpretation of the law. That's
Yeah.
I think the same challenge will happen in Peru. I think
Yeah.
your bar and your bench in Peru, your judges and your lawyers will have to reinterpret the contract
Yes,
law,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
etc., in Peru.
Hopefully they'll do a good job. Let's see how it goes. Perhaps we'll talk about that at some point also in the future. So, Richard, let's move into. I mean, we have already talked about that, but for the sake of clarification, let's go to digitization and sustainability. In the financial sector. Is it possible, to have these two concepts? Are these concepts agreeable between them,
Yeah,
beyond climate change?
yeah. My answer is definitely yes. Definitely, it's the two concepts can work together. Number one, for digitalization, is an ongoing process. For example, just up to 5 years ago, Miguel, we were still using checks to pay. We issue a check.
Yes, of
Everyone in the
course.
world, yeah,
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
seen the checks. It looks like this,
yeah.
banker's check, etc. Everybody in the world, if you put
Yes,
it this way, oh, it's a check.
yes.
And that has been digitalized. Number one. Number two, sustaining it. Sustaining it is, of course, building trust, changing behavior, as I mentioned earlier, and providing support to the system. That is going on in this region. Every government in this region, and in Malaysia, the last 5 years, the government is fully in support of this, pushing through the sustainable digitalization of fintech and insurtech and all these financial tech issues.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay. So now, the last point that we had for our conversation today, the challenges that these products represent, like DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, the metaverse, NFT, non-fungible tokens. So what challenges do they represent?
Miguel, about 3 years ago, I stumbled upon an article about the metaverse. I thought it was some comic book. Because we've heard the metaverse for many, many decades, this life in the digital world. But
Yeah.
Facebook, it was so confident, they even renamed the company, the metaverse company, you know. And I read an article when we were doing some sports work that a famous American sports company acquired space in the metaverse to open a stall in the metaverse. So I was like, wow, this is incredible. It's like, Miguel, you and me building a huge bungalow in the internet world. So we'll wear that goggles and go in and live there. And of course, that arises a new problem. So I was very fortunate. I had a discussion with a Malaysian law professor in London, and she happened to be expert in this area. And we had a few webinars. I can share with you the webinars later
Okay.
online.
Yeah.
And that discussion dealt with the legality, regulation, compliance of the metaverse. It's another Christopher Columbus situation. Totally brand new. And
Yeah.
there are problems with intellectual property, PDPA, jurisdiction, which law apply. As you know,
Yeah.
laws are very jurisdictional. Many of us tend to not realize as a law student, the first thing you study as a law is always jurisdiction, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the metaverse has no jurisdiction, for example.
No, no.
So yeah, and then the other issues about NFT, for example. NFT, of course, is another subset of blockchain, and
Yeah.
is a non-fungible token. It's a token without any identity, so you can implant anything on the token. And
Yes.
it seems to be very popular with art. I don't know how, but it end up being very popular with art. And
Yes.
in sports, where I'm doing, it's also become very popular. More and more athletes are imprinting their logo on the NFT and selling it. You know, so that is another ongoing, more of a commercial trade. I buy, I sell, I buy, I sell. But the metaverse is another world. It's a completely new world. Yeah. So we've been noticing that in Malaysia. I've been noticing it in my firm. We have been advising a few clients on it. But I think as lawyers, whether you're in Peru or in Malaysia, I think we have to be ready for the metaverse.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, there is a new world out there, so we need to prepare for those challenges. And as you made this interesting metaphor, like Christopher Columbus, we have to prepare our ships to go to these new territories that need to be discovered.
Yeah.
Hopefully, with a lawyer coming with it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think Christopher Columbus, he made a mistake when he sailed to the new land. He forgot to bring a lawyer with him.
but there was another lawyer who came. With the Mexican conquest. So South America, Peru was conquered by Francisco Pizarro. He
Yes,
was a
yes,
man
yes.
who didn't study, so a man from the countryside. But the man who led the conquest of Mexico was a notary public, you know.
Oh,
So he had everything ready on paper to be signed. And
interesting.
he returned to Spain. He went to
Hmm.
Spain back to live all his achievements. Whereas Pizarro, who came to Lima, died here. He
I
was executed
see.
here. So he wasn't a lawyer, and he didn't have a lawyer.
Very
So
interesting history. Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, it's been an extraordinary conversation. Very enlightening. So thank you very much for all your contributions. I hope this is not this is the first one, but it's not going to be the last one of many conversations that we're going to have for several topics. Having this intercontinental connection between Malaysia
Yes.
and Peru.
Yeah. In fact,
So,
Miguel, I would like to say this, that hopefully in a few months' time, I can also hold a podcast where we interview you,
oh,
where
certainly.
our listeners in Malaysia, we have quite a fair bit of followers in Malaysia. I mean, we're not a famous law firm. We're just a very active law firm. We try to help the community. We carry on lots of talks, webinars to help our friends. Maybe we can hold a webinar or a podcast where we can interview you about doing business in Peru and
Cer-
in South America.
Yes,
No?
certainly. More than
Yeah.
happy to do that. More than happy
Mm.
to do that. So,
Mm.
thank you very much, Richard. I know it's quite late for you, so you may be getting ready to go to bed, but thank you very much again. And it was really nice to talk to you.
All right. Thanks, Miguel.
Okay.
Take care.
Until next time.
Adios.
Thank you.
Adios, amigos.
Adios. Yeah.
Adios. Yeah.